Hello and welcome to this new episode of the Values Workshop. We have with us a guest that I do not know too much about, which seems to be the case more often than not these days. But it's an interesting mind space I've had with her that we spoke of in the one or two meetings that I've had with her. Let's check out what she has to share with us today. Let's begin. Welcome to this podcast, Sumati. Before I start asking the questions, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Surendra. Firstly, thank you so much for having me on this podcast series. When I heard it for the first time from you, it was a very interesting idea. It sounded a very interesting idea to me because something very new and something that is very much required in today's times, talking about values and being vulnerable. I think that's the series you've been following. So I'm Sumati, and I'm right now in Jaipur, Rajasthan. That's where I come from. And I've been an academic counselor and a curriculum designer in terms of my profession. And yeah, I just recently came back from Bombay. That's where I met you. And I'm just here on this podcast with a very open mind. I don't know what we are going to talk about. So let's see where it takes us.
Okay. That's a very good introduction because I didn't have my first question. I didn't know what I wanted to ask you. I'm getting a little more into the zone where I don't even prepare for the first question, which is where I generally, when I set things up, put on the podcast light or the laptop or whatever, I start thinking what is it that I want to ask so that I at least have a conversation starter of sorts. Of late, I think even that I'm trying to give up and see where it goes from. Entering like a guest. So I got my question from what you just introduced yourself as. Since you are into defining patterns of knowledge, if I were to call it that.
Yes, you can put it that
Okay.
way.
Why do we need to define them at all? When life itself is far too open and need not be put into buckets of science and mathematics and English or whatsoever. Just a random question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good question to start with. And because I come from this education space. So, because there has already been an existing and very well defined system of education, like uh, how children should read, how they should study, how they should receive education, or how even teachers should deliver education. And there is a very fixed system in terms of the delivery of subject knowledge, and then how you take how a kid takes his or her journey from the very early stages to a very professional career. So because that is so much defined already, that's very limiting in nature. It's very limited in terms of how every children wants to receive diverse kind of knowledge and in diverse ways. So that is why in our attempt, like the reason why I am associated with education sector is because I did not belong to that studious category initially, where I could just read everything, study, and then get higher scores. But because the system was so defined and very mainstream, and because I did not fit into it, so hence, as and when I kept moving forward in my career, I realized that we need to really move forward with a system that's more open and more inclusive in nature. So rather, you can say that in this space, I'm trying to undefine those existing systems so that we can have more more diversity and more ways of teaching, learning in general, irrespective of just schooling system.
Okay.
I don't know if that
Would
answers
you?
your question.
It does. I'm thinking, is it a silent rebellion of sorts, or are you taking revenge on the system?
No, it's not silent, it's very much openly out there, and even the government is now kind of being welcoming towards it. And yes, it's a revenge in a way, but it's a very yeah, it's a noble revenge, I would like to believe that.
Uh, what were your struggles with the structured way of being? This is a response, what you have right now. Would there be a space where you really struggled with it? This is not a very mainstream kind of career that you're talking about. Uh, I wouldn't be off the mark if I said you are the first person of this sort that I know who's inclusive. I have known people who have been charting out subjects. My own teacher of advertising was part of the new BMM course that came up, and some other courses that came up in the Bombay University. Uh, so since there was no mass media course till then, uh, they borrowed, they invented, they innovated, they tried to make uh, something which was structure worthy for people to follow. But my question is one step prior to that. In your case, when you are uh, responsive, there is a reason why the response comes up. There is something that is not right about what is happening to you. Even if it is a small dish you just made and you realize, there's not enough salt or something is missing, or you try to do something, add some tomato sauce and just make it palatable at that point of time. This is much more bigger because you're actually spending your life doing something uh, which means something to you. What was either the turning point or what was the reason why you chose this?
That's a loaded question.
Well, I'm a failed engineer, if that helps.
Sorry, come again.
I'm a failed engineer, if that helps. Once upon a time.
Okay, now it will, I guess. Okay, so I think that, so it's been a journey for me, but if I have to just, try to put it in a nutshell and see where the turning point was. So as I told you initially, like, in my early stages of life, like schooling, I was not a very studious person. And then later on, I just, my parents were after my life. I decided to study, and then I topped, and then I got into India as one of the best colleges in Delhi University. And then I went there. So I realized a reality that okay, so and now I belong, like I had seen both the spaces where I was more free, fun loving and playing all the time, and then I also was a part of another category where you were studying all the time. But then when I went to my college in Delhi and I was staying all by myself, there were a lot of, I was not able to understand what was happening to me because I was not able to like I was not able to belong to any particular given space. I was not able to study, I was not able to focus there. And then something was going on in the background that I was not aware of. And the result was that I was not very active in my college in terms of studies or extracurricular activities. I've always been, I've always liked sports. So there I was active, but then there was not even a support system that could help me to understand that okay, so Sonati, there is something that is going on and you need to deal with it. Teachers or professors would just come up to me and tell me that you need to be more regular and all of that. So I still did not realize what was happening. So because I have a lot of interest right now in my career towards mental health and social emotional learning. So social emotional learning, just to put it in a context, is it's a domain that now many of the governments, and they're trying to bring in the education system so that children are more aware about their emotions and they can handle themselves and manage themselves better. So for me, when I kept moving on with my career, I tried multiple things until I myself had a phase where I was going through like a lot of anxiety and clinical depression. And there were people out there, like professionals, who could help me figure that out and also take me back to the journey that, okay, it's not something that just popped up right now in 2020, but it's been a journey that you've been carrying since years. And so now I could, in 2020, back in 2020, I could see, okay, there has been a journey, and not just me, but there were many students, many, students in my own college like me who were struggling in a sort of a similar way, but not having enough resources to help them understand. And that felt very personal to me. So mental health in general and having that academic counseling where you can choose options that are not there, because I did not connect with the idea of just taking a job right after my college. I did not connect with the idea of going for masters, going for MBA, nothing. I did not connect with any of those. And I also did not know what could I go with. So hence I felt this idea of defining or question or trying to understand how our education system works at all the levels, at the school level, at the college level, and even after that. So that's what hit me, and I felt, okay, I want to spend my time maybe in this particular area and be more vulnerable. So this is one place where I'm trying to be vulnerable, and I don't know how far, how deep I can go, but yeah, that was one incident. And professionally, because I was out of my college long back in 2020, I was already working, I was doing my first job. And when I met people, professionals in corporate setup, semi-corporate setup, so I also learned that they have their own set of challenges too with regards to their mental health. Like they don't have enough choices, even in terms of career, like because they have set of responsibilities, they need money, every month salary. So they also have to go on with whatever job they have. And that's a lack of privilege that they have to deal with. So I realize that mental health in general is a larger issue that we need to understand. And from very early stages, we need to build a support system that can help people make choices, and help them see that you have choices, because the problem is that they don't see it as a choice. I did not see it as a choice that I could do something that I did not know of, or I could try something unknown, because I didn't even know about the options. So yeah, it's somewhere around that. So post 2020, I have been very clear that okay, this is the domain I wanna keep continuing.
Okay. Okay, I have a bias, I'll admit, and then ask you the question. I have a
Yes.
bias against toppers. Somehow throughout my life, I have felt people who have stood first in anything, actually, for that matter, except for sports and all. I haven't given it too much of space, but academics definitely. And I find that they are boring. They are into games of one-upmanship. This is, I have told you that I have a bias. Now I'm quite okay about the whole thing. It's like to each his own. But also that they are not happy. In the rest of their lives, somewhere they lose the track. Somehow I feel they peaked too early, kind of thought in my head. So here is your chance, one, to stand up. Since you stood first for a while, you know what it feels like. Uh, what is the mind state? Is it good or bad? How valid is the argument that I'm making? Because one problem that I saw in myself while you were talking is that why should we be biased towards any kind of student, even a topper for that matter? Sometimes we are far too easy in our classifications in our mind and very judgmental about it. So here's your chance to help me reduce my judgment about toppers for starting. That is one of the questions I have right now.
Mm-hmm. But before answering your question, I want to understand, when you say that you feel that they're kind of happy, so what do you mean by
Not
that?
happy. Not
But
happy.
they're not. Okay.
Like if, because I always saw things on a scale of time and
Mm-hmm.
space. So if schooling was when they were very good at what they did, and all of us looked up to them because all teachers loved the toppers and all kinds of things happened. Later, I found them floundering with basics of friendship, basics of family life, or street smartness. I found it very, uh, of course, one part of me could be vengeful about it. Perhaps I don't know. Right now, I'm like I wasn't too. I was good at studies, language specifically, uh, and I was confident of myself. I did not want to stand first or any such thing. Of course, the attention is something that we all hanker after, because when you see somebody is getting that kind of attention, you feel, oh, wish everybody looked up to me. But as far as studies went, I never thought that I needed to know all the answers or some such thing. So now coming with that context, I see that uh, maybe they are also bearing the brunt of a system which is unkind to them also, in spite of them beating the system and for a temporary phase of time and coming first, for example. What do you have to say about that? Because you said you've been on both sides. Failure, I think a lot of us can relate to in various ways. But being a topper is something that nobody speaks about kindly. So do you want to talk about that a bit?
And that's a question that nobody has asked me before, to be very honest.
I haven't thought of it till today. So
So firstly, I would like to give a very naive answer, like how I experienced all this in that moment.
Yeah.
So when I would study after a point of time, and I literally tell you, in 10th, in one of unit tests or semester tests that we used to have, I failed, and by the end of the year, I was doing well. And then in both the years I studied, so I felt one thing, that I was the one who literally failed in many of the tests, and then I topped. So anybody can study. This is something anybody can. So anybody, if anybody has interest or willingness or want to study, that person, he or she can study. But the reason why I chose to study and go forward and just put all my attention towards just my academics was there was a lot of societal pressure. And when now I see the whole situation, how I see, and because I have been dealing with students, I have been working with students of all kinds of all of the different ages in different age groups. So I feel there's a lot of social pressure, especially also on all kinds of students. Now, from the childhood itself, there are some students who would be rebellious, who will just stop listening to the external voices that also include your parents' voices. So they'll be like, "Acha, theek hai, jo bhi ho raha hai, hum to khelenge, hum to yahi karenge." But there'll be some students who will be too affected by those voices that they will streamline themselves and they will try to put themselves in a structure. So not that they did not have any creativity, or not that, how you said that, they maybe later turn out as not that street smart and not that go-to people who can just immediately problem solve something. So it could have been existing, of course, as a child, but then later, when they are too much pressurized, when they take the voices so seriously, they tend to suppress those voices within themselves, and they just try to look at the whole picture in just one way. That okay, you have to study, you have to score well, you have to earn well, you have to get married or whatsoever life you want to have. Then there's a very limited scope of rethinking that, because you've already structured it so much, and once you age after a point of time, then of course it's very difficult to go back to those fundamental questions. So I feel yes, and the reason why it's these academically very sound students is that because they themselves fail to empathize with themselves, because they're not asking these questions to themselves. So now they are taking everything that the world is giving them. Ki, "Acha, tum yahi karo, tum wahi karo." So that ways, there is a very limited scope for even them to come forward and say that, "No, I don't connect with that, or I don't resonate with that." Because I still remember after my college, when I chose a career that did not pay me well, or that was hardly paying me initially for 2 years or 3 years. So my parents did come up to me and they told me that these are the repercussions that you will have later in your career. You will not, it will be difficult for you to earn so well like other people in corporate setup they are doing. I said, okay, I understand. And they पूरा अच्छे से डराया, they do that because their parents are protective about you. They want the best for you. So I get it where they come from. But then, yeah, they did that very same thing to me as well. But then I have been that rebellious kid that I was clear in my head that nahi karke dekhte hain zyada se zyada kya hoga. We get an experience for life. So yeah, I think that's what my answer is. So the world is definitely not kind to them because they have stopped listening to those voices within themselves. So once they start asking questions, what really matter to me? Because there is a very standard idea or definition of success, that how should success look like, what it should look like. So I think everybody can define their own success. And now at this stage where I am right now in my life, I think I have my friends around me in different career domains, having different kind of incomes, like in different ranges. So, but I know, and they are living different kind of lifestyle. So I know what kind of a lifestyle I want for myself, and hence I am trying to make those kind of choices that align with my own idea of success. So there is a, even now there is a societal pressure. Parents will come and tell you, "देख वो ऐसा कर रहा है, वो वहाँ है, वो इतना कमा रहा है," तो वो सब तो चलता रहेगा. But when you have that clarity within yourself, I think the path is more easy to go on.
So now a question to the teaching side of you, because of the answer that you gave. I have been a creative for now quite a large part of my life. One of the things that I am very well known for in all the places that I have worked is that I take people out for chai. While they are right in the middle of some kind of stress or something or whatever, I seem to be the one who's the committed loser. I never seem to have stress. I will always tell them, "Arey, why bother? Chalo chai pi ke aate hain. Let's go out for tea and let's jabber about the world. Let's not bother. We are creative people. Come on. We can't be sitting on a computer or
That's how we also
cracking."
met first time on chai.
True. But in a formal setup, even people that I work with who are, I'm a copywriter, so always I've had a partner who's a designer. So design people have to do a lot more work. They need to be there on their system to figure out things a lot more than I have to. I can get an idea anywhere and I can message it and it's kind of done. Not always that easy. It requires a lot of work as well, but physical work in terms of doing stuff on the system, I think that has been a challenge. And I find even they become boring after a point. They become very restricted in their thinking. They need to be on the system or find something on the internet, or which is something that I've always found limiting. As a teacher, now my question comes from my personal experience of always thinking, okay, you've got to buck the system at some point. You just let go of whatever preconceived notions you have about the job. So very, very simple examples. So in 25 years that I've had in advertising, I have worked on almost known and unknown products of all kinds, raw material, this, that, everything that one can think of or has never heard of either of them. And yet, every time you sit on a job, how many ever number of times you've done it, it's always a new job. So if I bring to you the same idea, say suppose you are a academic counselor and you have a academy or something that other people work with you, and you want to just put forward the fact that you are innovative in your approach or whatever. I can't come and give you the words innovative because you already know it. Then I can't come and tell you that you're creative. You'll say, it is done to that. So every now and then the same information has to be packed and repacked and has to make sense to you when I'm presenting it to you. It cannot be just play of words. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is your own preconceived notion that I'm selling to, because I realize you are a hard nut to crack and I don't want to spend time. I would just want your money and I'll just give you exactly what you want and I'll get away with it. But that's a separate part. But I'm talking just knowledge. So that knowledge has to be looked and relooked, and you need to find a new way to interpret it. And it is a compulsion. Like if I don't deliver, you won't pay. It's as simple as that. I find that knowledge should be pursued perhaps this way. That is my limitation because that's my experience. Do you agree as a teacher or as an academic counselor that whatever is given to us as kids or adults, as corporates, as businesses, as anything, needs to be first relooked at least as objectively as we can be? Because I think I did a podcast yesterday or a couple of days back, and I used the word, like I had read somewhere in a greeting card, the only things that are required in life are awe and reverence. And I found that those are really words which when I bring to life, I don't always do that. But when I bring them to life, I really find a lot of joy in the creation process, or at least the discovery, or it can come from you, it can come from anybody. I want to know, is there a way to relook at things which will help these toppers, these successful people, these unsuccessful people, because we are all buying into a narrative. This is what it is. This is how it has to be. You are supposed to be good at this, have a good job, get married, have kids, or do whatever. It's okay. You may still opt for the same procedure, but at least let it be your choice. At least relook at it and say, yeah, this gives me peace because this is how I am. I am a homebody. It's okay. So, your thoughts on the pursuit of knowledge in this matter?
So I think that's a very beautiful and very thoughtful line of thought that you just shared with me here. And I agree with you on this. And I think that comes more from a very systemic point of view. So because if we talk about spaces first, not individuals, but the organizations, businesses that are running and that are forming systems, either they are forming their own systems or they are following the systems that have been generations or buying the narrative, as you said. So that definitely has to be questioned, and the culture that has been existing has to be redefined if there is a need. So, but it's, having said that, it's also not easy. So firstly, you have to see what kind of employees are there. If you're open to have employees of, from diverse backgrounds, because I think first thing, it starts from there. If you're having only old employees in the organizations, and that's good, that's very good to maintain the system, because that helps you stay true to the fundamental of the organization, of any organization. But how open you are in terms of your thought process to have those new ideas and new ways of doing things. Maybe same things can be done. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you here? I don't want you to get into the mechanics of it. The question is really mind space, your own mind space if possible. Because the more, if it becomes gyan, then it is not your lived experience. And I am fairly interested into your mind space because you really have the entire gamut of experiences, from failure to going well to anxiety. So I mean, systematically, you met also other kinds of people, I'm sure, other students who had these different mindsets as well. Is there something, I like the fact that you said that the ambience has to be created for that. But right now, systematic change is other. I want to know, individually, when the dark space is there a dark space? How do we look at it? What really happens? You spoke a little bit about it earlier, but I mean, okay, let me rephrase the question. This will make it easier. So you had the dark space, and now you have a go-to, at least, line of thought, whatever you are doing right now. Between that, there was this aha moment. Okay, I'm studying this. This is what I realized. This is how I'm tackling this. If you could share something from your personal experience regarding that, because you are part of the system now. Sorry to interrupt, but I wanted that penetrating line of thought.
Yeah, and good that you paraphrased the question, because so if I talk about, like, from my own experience, so definitely, so there was a dark space. I don't know if to really call it a dark space, but there was a phase when I was struggling to define myself for you. So there was also a system I was a part of professionally. So when the phase was going on, I was already a part of the system. I was working, I was already there on one of the projects, and we are doing it online. So, but then at that time, when I learned that, okay, I am struggling with something else right now, I'm dealing with something else that may not be common to the world outside, but then I will also not be able to perform at my best right now. So I had to, so the ways that I took, firstly, I had to, I needed to have that conversation with myself that, okay, firstly, make peace with what's going on. Okay, you just can't compete right now. because at that time I remember there were other peer group, like there were other people around me, they were looking forward to the new jobs and we were about to enter a new professional space, and even my priority was that to figure out what next. But then I had to stop and to breathe, that no, that is not my priority. My priority is this. Let's just come back and focus on this. Then of course at the organizational level I had to go back to my employee, like to my program leaders, and I had to communicate the same to them, that right now I'm on a break and I cannot, like at least for a few days I need to just feel better before coming back. And then I had to find my own ways out. Like I started doing yoga, I started doing painting, and nobody came and told me all of this. I was just seeing things online, what would be the coping mechanisms, how can I, better, because I needed to be in that moment for that period of time to feel better and to come out of that phase. And I had to be determined enough. So I think that conversation with myself helped a lot. Besides that, my parents' support, because I was back at my parents' house. So they supported me too. And I had to surrender to them as well at some point of time. That they can help you too. So I think it was a combination of multiple things, and after that having a routine, a proper schedule, and knowing what works for me. So journaling has been working for me, so I try to go back to it and I try to keep it as regular as possible. So identifying the areas and the actions that work for you as an individual, and I think that also helped me to come back faster. That was not my goal to come back faster to my professional life, but I came back. It just happened on its own. So I think that kind of work that I had to do with myself, I did that. I was honest with that, and that helped me to come back to my work and be regular, and things were fine after a few months. So yeah, I mean, there's no other fancy story,
Yeah,
but
okay. No, this is not a fancy story. I really like the answer that you brought up. So basically, you're saying it's okay to fail to start with, and to acknowledge that you're failing at something very basic sometimes.
yeah, yeah,
There are there are times like after 20 years also I cannot crack a line. So off late in the last, I think post COVID, I have been very honest with my clients. I tell them I have not been able to crack it. I don't know what to do. So you will have to give me this space. There's always the chance that they will think that you're not good enough, or you're getting too old for the profession, or the deadlines are too much. Very important to me is the beginning of the job. I ask them what is the deadline. I promise only when I think I have time. I obviously, bad habits die hard. There are certain times I will, since I can't say no to you, since I can't say no to that other client, I'll end up saying yes. But I have realized, irrespective of me wanting it or not, during the middle of the job, when it's very high stress, I have to come and tell you that I cannot finish it, because it does not happen. You cannot, it's not a machine that you keep on overworking. And even if it is, then you need to give it its space and work on its gears and whatever. Your mental, physical space is fairly sacred enough in terms of understanding. You need to know what space you are in. There are days when, like a couple of days back, I was unwell and I just didn't pick up the call. I kept my phone on. I kept it on silent. Every few hours, I would wake up, I would see it, I would respond to whatever was necessary to respond, which was more or less saying, please don't disturb me. I am unwell. And it was in the middle of a very hectic and very important job that I was. But I realized it wasn't worth it. Like I might have had to travel to Delhi and get a shoot done. And I'm fairly responsible. Like I think all middle class houses in this country, we all belong to a generation and a time and space where you value your word very much and you want to go out and perform and give your best. But over a period, I have understood that is not how you have to go about doing things. You have to say no. And you also have to say that you cannot do it. You are not superhuman. In fact, a couple of days back, I just read, I think only yesterday, that Virat Kohli said that he's feeling a performance
yeah,
problem, or he's stressed out, or he's anxious. He's Virat Kohli, for God's sake. And if he feels it, then everybody is allowed to feel it. But this whole macho thing, even in women, I find that there is no sex part of it, male or female here. I think we're all now programmed to become super efficient like our devices, working all the time. Even our devices cannot let go of a Bluetooth or something. We need them working all the time. It doesn't happen. That is something that I find very interesting. I have a couple of questions more, but I'll have to stop and send you a new link.
Okay. All right.
And this will take a couple of minutes to
Sure.
process.